Good morning, everyone. This is Karma Baughman. Thank you for joining us this morning. Ben's going to be joining us. We're having a few technical difficulties, so he'll be joining us here shortly. We should see his video and audio come on. If you cannot hear me, let me know through the chat box. And for those that may be new to this, just a couple logistics. In the top right of your screen, you'll see a what is called a moderated chat box. Oh, good. I think we see Ben coming on. Okay, you're live, hon.
Am I live?
Yeah,
Nice.
we hear you.
I'm there. I got it moved to the side.
Yeah. If you'd like to ask a question or a comment throughout this webinar, at the top right, at the bottom of the moderated chat box, enter your question or comment, click send, and we will see that from our end. So just Ben and I will see that, and we will certainly respond to your question or your comment as we go through the webinar. So don't hesitate to do that. We love interaction. So jump in as you would like to. And for those that would like to share more vocally, if you will, you'll see a button underneath your video that says ask a question. Simply press on that. I will see that from my end, that there's somebody waiting to ask a question, and I will turn the mic over to you at the appropriate time. Anything else? I don't think so. This week we read a chapter from Ben's book Untracked called "What You Would Do with Really Notorious Disreputable Sinners." And I must say, as I read through this chapter and as I looked at the questions that correspond to this chapter, it was rather convicting for me. One of the sentences that really jumped out for me in the chapter, I'm going to find them here and read them really quickly. Towards the end of and it's a very short chapter, just 3 pages, but towards the bottom of the second page, if you're using the print version of the book, he's prompting us. He's mentioning that the friends of Jesus weren't just normal sinners; they were sinners in all caps. And then he mentions they didn't do little things like ignore mercy or justice. They were tax collectors and prostitutes and a few other exceedingly immoral types in God's eyes. They weren't sinners; they were sinners. And it made me think about who are my friends and who have I welcomed into my life and invited into my life to be friends. And I must say, I'm not sure if I've done so well with that. I think there's probably a bit of me that categorizes sinners as well. And so this chapter has certainly challenged me to maybe rethink that in my life and what I can do to invite, maybe just be more open to all types of people, as Jesus was, and as we see he did as he walked on this side of heaven. So that's our introduction into this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Ben, and he's going to share more of his thoughts as we go through this chapter.
Thank you, Karma. You know, I've just had a week with Chris and Krista and Cole, my 8-month-old grandson, and it has been very, very, very special. And this morning, as I was thinking through this, he was lying asleep in my arms. What a special treat that was. And thinking of that, and I'm thinking, oh God, I am so glad you are the father image to me that I desperately need in this world. And I want to share a passage with you, actually. I'm going to put a couple chapters together this morning because they just fit together. They fit in my thoughts together. But there's a favorite story in the Old Testament to me that's been a favorite forever, as long as I can remember, I think. And that's the story of Samuel and having this conversation with God on who's going to be chosen to be king of Israel. And God chooses David, and Samuel can't, it's kind of like, choose one of the other brothers. God does, they're big and tough and strong and tall and all those other things, and people need to see that in the king. And God just says this wonderful fatherly thing to Samuel. Samuel, men look on outward appearances. You got to know something about me. God looks on the heart. What an encouraging story that is. And that it applies to David is really interesting because David is the man that later on God says is a man after my own heart. And that's so interesting. Even in all of his failures and, you know, the moral issues that we would talk about today with David or whatever, God says, I see his heart. I know his heart. And there's something so good about that heart. And he loves us for reasons that are different than the reasons we usually choose to love people and to think they're wonderful and to think they're good. We choose nice things. We like nice things. So we like nice people. We like good looking people, or like people that treat us nice, or people that are easy for us to get along with. But there's this very wonderful thing that about God that Jesus shows us too. That this piece of the story that I've had all my life that so encouraged me that I've said at times when I've failed, I've messed up, oh God, you see my heart. And I believe it. And Jesus shows me that. I love it. I love it because he shows me this picture of these in the New Testament in in all of his actions that really truly is what God is like. So the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all of those that are feeling pretty good about their religion and feeling pretty good about how they've got it down and God's, God's a nice God. He likes things a certain way and these people are sinners. These people are really sinners. And Jesus sees them differently because he looks at their heart. And I used to think years ago that maybe we couldn't see hearts very well because man looks at the outward appearance and we could only see the outside things. But I really don't think it's all that difficult for us to see hearts. And I believe that that's something we got to cultivate, nurture inside of us. Looking inside people to see their hearts instead of looking on the outside because we think, oh, wow, I want to be around them. They're great people. They're nice people. Look at their perfect kids, and oh my goodness, and they're people everybody else will like too. And maybe we ought to quit looking at those outward appearances and begin looking at the hearts of people. And this whole section of the book has a lot to do with that. In 300-pound Jesus, I've never met anybody that had practiced more seeing the hearts of people that were on the margins, people that didn't have the advantages that you and I have. What an incredible thing it is. So Jesus, as he's going through his ministry here on earth, who is he around? He's around tax collectors, not liked at all. He's around prostitutes, thought of very lowly. Uh, maybe used and abused sometimes secretly by those who were trying to, put a good front on the outside, but nevertheless thought of as, oh, terrible sinners. I think we do that today. We categorize people in our evangelical circles, especially with these sinful things. And we don't use, and of course, it's a tongue in cheek chapter. So much of it's tongue in cheek. You know, they didn't practice little sins like not practicing justice or mercy. Obviously, those are the ones that ought to be huge for us. The very fact that we don't practice justice or we don't practice mercy, we ought to know that in God's eyes, He is saying, oh, I am a merciful God, and I'm a just God, and I'm a compassionate God. But instead, when we think of niceties in people, and we think, oh, we've got to choose them by how nice they are. What we tend to be then is judgmental. And we don't serve a judgmental God. Instead, we serve one who's compassionate and merciful and kind, good in every way, who looks at the heart of someone, says, oh, there's where the potential lies. I look in there and see somebody who wants to be good. They want to love and want to be loved. And he loves them. So Jesus says about these crazy, notoriously bad sinners that were disreputable in their culture. He says they're going to make it to heaven before you righteous people are, that are so nice about everything, but you're judgmental of others. That's an incredible thought process. It needs to be at the core of each of our beings. That we don't look at somebody because of by what they do on the outside, but we look at them and see the heart that's inside of them. I think if family and friends that I've had now that are in the gay and lesbians and transgender community, and I think, oh God, what a false idea we have. We're in the same position as those Sadducees and those Pharisees of Jesus' time. And they would look at the prostitute and say, I can't see her heart, but I can sure tell she's sinning. She's a terrible sinner. And instead of the love and mercy, and instead of seeing her heart, just like in our case, instead of seeing the heart of the individuals, we see the outward. God looks at the inside. I can tell you that for some of those now that I've had the incredible privilege of getting to know, they have hearts of gold. What a privilege it is to know them and to know that they're going to make it into the kingdom of heaven before the religious types are. That look at the outward appearance and want everybody to be nice. And I'm going to move between these chapters because there's one just a little ways down that I think it's a couple chapters after this. It's just nice and good are not the same. And as institutions, we like nice people. We like to be able to control them, and we tell them this is nice and this is not nice, and you practice this and you don't practice this. But the problem with that is that it really doesn't take us to the heart of who God is. Because when we look at Jesus, we can't. In fact, I'll say this before I even go further. This is why they wanted to crucify him. He was not very nice. You say, well, what do you mean he wasn't nice? Well, he was nice when he should be nice. He was nice when it went with being good. But he wasn't nice if it got in the way of being good. So he's not very nice to the Pharisees always. Yeah, if you're a Pharisee and otherwise, if you're somebody who's in the religious community who is convinced that that's where all the answers are, and that you need to judge everything by whether it fits that or not, then Jesus says, you whitewashed graves. You cover yourself with this whitewash, but you're nothing but dead men's bones on the inside. You snakes, you vipers. Doesn't sound very nice to me, but he's so good. What a difference it is. That's what we need to become. We need to find in others the good in their hearts and quit looking at the outward appearances that religion tends to look at and start saying, what's inside that person? What's in their heart? Oh my, how important it is. How incredibly important it is. And I'm going to open it up to this conversation to you because um, most of us have at least been around religion a lot. And, um, you know, looking back at it, you struggle with that? Is that a piece of something that is difficult for you, to say this difference between nice and good? And is it hard for you? Because I even think, well, who do I want my kids to be friends with? Who do, we, boy, did I fight that in the church sometimes. You know, as most of you know, we had an adopted son that was with us actually as the court had given him to us for a long time, and he died at 21 because of things that were beyond our control. Um, that he was black, and I don't know how many times I saw two things very clearly displayed. Now, I want to say the good one first. Like we had a group of church moms, and there were many others too. I'm going to use them as an example of the good. They only saw his heart. And so they treated him like he was absolutely um, a wonderful, wonderful human being. He was, because his heart was so good. But there were other issues that weren't always easy for him. He didn't always do things in a way that were nice by society's standards. And we had to deal with that. It was because of damage in the brain, but that didn't always show up to everybody out there. So he often got judged very severely for those things. And we also felt the pieces where the color of the skin made a difference. We realized what white privilege we have. Color of the skin really did make a difference. And there were times it even came back to us. We would defend him, or when he would just be part of our family, and all of a sudden there were people that would snub us. But that was such an interesting thing. Those ladies, those church moms that saw his heart, oh, what it meant to him. What it meant to him. I cannot tell you, I can tell you this today, and he's buried in Fort Morgan because to him, there wasn't any place was home with Fort Morgan, and it was because of the people that gave him value there, those church moms and others as well, that just loved him and saw the best in him, saw the heart that was like gold in him. What an incredible thing that is. And so many people get left on the margins because we simply aren't looking at hearts. We're looking at whether they're nice or not, whether they fit all of our guidelines for whether they've done life well or not. And so we don't see their hearts, but God does. I want to be like God. I want to be like Jesus, who looks at a Samaritan woman and doesn't say, I can't deal with you. Not only are you a Samaritan, but you've had 5 husbands and you're living with a guy. And he doesn't condemn her. What an incredible thing it is. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on that? I'd love to open it up for you. What kind of things does that bring up? Look at that. You see how Jesus responds.
I'll jump in here. It makes me think, even in our day-to-day activities and as we just go about life, keeping our eyes open for those that just need maybe a little assistance. I think of an incident just yesterday as we were pulling into a grocery store parking lot, and there was this older lady in the back of her car. She had obviously just loaded her groceries into the back of her car. I also noticed it was a new car because it still had the stickers that need to be registered by a certain date. And as we pulled up, we noticed she was using her cane to try and pull down the back hatch, whatever it's called. And she was struggling with that. It would come partway down, then her cane would slip and the hatch would go back up. And of course, as we pulled up and noticed this, Ben pulled to the side and I jumped out and went over to assist her because she simply just could not reach the top of her hatch to close the hatch and go on home. So I jumped out and pulled the hatch down for her and closed it. And I was to be honest, I was kind of surprised by her response because to me, it was just a very simple gesture. But to her, it meant almost the world to her. She said, "Oh, you're so sweet," and that somebody would take the time to just come and assist her. And then she explained to me it was a new car, and so she had the new car syndrome, was trying to figure out how this is going to work for her. But it her response just impacted me. It made me think about how often do maybe I walk by and not give a simple gesture of just reaching out to assist, or maybe it's just a smile, or maybe it's a hug, or whatever it is. But just keeping our eyes open. I think Jesus was an incredible example of that. He didn't turn away. He didn't close his eyes. He didn't um, turn away and just ignore that. But he was always reaching out to those around, including a Samaritan woman or a tax collector or others.
Thank you, Karma. That's so interesting, isn't it? And we face it actually every day, and I think we're not aware of it most of the time that we face these kind of things. It's sometimes just in the smile that somebody that maybe is on the margins of life needs to have somebody who perhaps they look at and say, oh, I wish I had life like that. And that somebody just really gives an honest smile to them, maybe says hello to them. I think another story, another chapter here that's right close by, but it's in the same kind of thing. And Jesus isn't using color as much as he's using nationality because at that time, at least among the culture he's in, it's very, very easy to see. And so he tells another story about a Samaritan. And this is the one where, of course, he's the this teacher of the law is trying to school him and find out what he really knows, and it's the one where he actually answers Jesus well because Jesus turns it around on him and says, will you tell me what are the most important commandments? And he answers well. He gives them. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, you've answered well. And so then the man, realizing that, oh, well, I got to still try to catch Jesus, tries to catch him with this one that just always tickles me. It's the kind of thing you often get when you're dealing with theology versus anything else. And the real world, and he says, oh, then I have a question for you. Who is my neighbor? But I think that question is one we've got to face in our everyday lives too. Who is my neighbor? Jesus answers that with this wonderful story of a man who falls by the wayside, robbed and beaten. And he's somebody he's let us know that's high enough up that in the religious circles that two of the religious leaders should really be saying, I mean, at least he's kind of like us, we ought to help him. But instead, they're too busy with their religious lives to notice or they notice, but then they walk by on the other side. They do everything they can to avoid him, and they excuse their behavior. And how many times have we excused our behavior with, I'm busy? How many times have we excused our behavior with you know, they probably deserve to have that happen to them, or something along that line. But what happens is next is so interesting because it's a Samaritan. It would be like saying, um, if in a racially charged culture or a religiously charged culture like we have now, it would be like saying he's a Muslim. Um, but Jesus uses that and says he's a Samaritan, and a Samaritan comes by and he has compassion on him, treats him well, puts him on his own donkey. He takes him to the local bed and breakfast, and he sets him up for enough time to heal and makes sure that everything is set there, and tells the owner, he treats it so responsibly, tells the owner of the bed and breakfast, look, I'll come by again, and if it's taken any more, don't worry, I'll take care of that too. And he just takes care of. And then Jesus asks this question of the teacher of the law. Who was the neighbor? Is it the man? I think that's just more of the same story. God looks on the heart. We look on the outward appearances. And then we just judge our lives and go about our business and don't really see we need to see. What an incredible world it'll be if we begin living this way. What a difference it will make. Real hearts of real people will come alive again. Wow, this is huge to me. Any comments or questions?
We have a comment here that says, is there any movement among denominations or groups across denominations to focus on good instead of just nice? It seems that the religious structure is so paramount that religious leaders are afraid to depart from nice.
Whoa, Paul. You have probably stated it as well as it could be stated when you said it seems that the religious structure is so paramount that religious leaders are afraid to depart from nice. You know, I talk about that in the Nice versus Good chapter. Nice is controllable. You control that by you have these rules, these regulations, these laws, these things, and you say you act like this, and this is you're nice. We say they're nice or they're not nice. But good is really interesting. Good isn't controllable, and so what you see is good is foundational. So good controls us. Nice can be controlled. So I can I want people to be nice if I'm an institution because I can control that. I can settle very quickly. Okay, these are the things we believe. These are the things we do not believe. This is the way we act. These are the ways things we don't do with our actions. You know, our thoughts. Oh, we should be thinking about these things. We shouldn't be thinking about these things. But they don't get to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is in good. Good cannot be controlled. It controls us. We know good. We understand good. It's kind of an interesting thing, but it doesn't always control us. It's it's kind of our laws are that way. It's not always true that we can obey the laws specifically, completely, and still be good. Sometimes we have to choose to be good. So it might show that in our protection. and obviously another chapter that I've talked about this in Love and Protect Children and Other People More Vulnerable Than I. Well, Jesus shows us that. You know, there's places where we may break the law protecting somebody that's more vulnerable than we or but it's the right thing to do. So we do it because it's good. Good is not controllable. And it's why when Jesus is good, but not always nice, they want to crucify him. You can't control people that will be good, even if it means they can't be nice at that time. And that was a tremendous struggle within denominations. Denominations revert to niceness. We want our people to be nice and to follow these particular guidelines. Sometimes good steps beyond that. Sometimes good says, no, we won't follow that. Instead, we're going to love these people that you say are not necessarily good. We're going to look at their heart, or we're going to do things that are good. I so badly want it written on my gravestone. You went about doing good. That's what Peter says about Jesus in the book of Acts after Jesus is gone from them. He went about doing good.
And I would add to that, he asked the question, is there any movement towards doing good versus just doing nice? And I don't know if there's any movement necessarily. I think there certainly are, maybe Ben can address that more, but there certainly are pockets, I think, of people attempting to do good versus nice. And what comes to mind is we were at a conference a couple of weeks ago, as we shared a couple of weeks ago, and there was a speaker. She was a Black woman as one of the speakers for those couple of days, and she was sharing. It's a bigger story than what I'm going to put in here, but she was sharing some of the things she's come up against. She used to be at I would call she was a professor at a fairly conservative college and was eventually asked to leave because of the stance that she took on some issues. But in addition to that, she also shared her experience of being a Black woman amongst the very white Protestant people. And even coming to the conference, she said, I arrived at the conference, I think she said maybe a day early. And because she arrived a day early, one of the white Protestant people immediately assumed and asked her, are you one of the musicians? So even there, and as she was sharing this incident back to us a day or two later, it was striking because she said that was you, meaning us in general. That was our response to her, was that we assumed, oh, she must be a musician because she's Black and she's maybe even a woman. But no, she was a speaker. And so what I liked how that was handled after the fact. Instead of just kind of ignoring what she was sharing with us, they actually asked her to come back on the next morning with another person. So it was two people up there, another person who I think is part of this doing good versus nice. And they wanted to find out more and talk with her more and get more ideas or more feedback on how we can improve as a very white Protestant people in reaching out and embracing and accepting those of, in this case, a different color, but it was beyond that, those that are maybe what we would consider different. So I think in that incident, in that scenario, there was an attempt there to be good versus just being nice. And maybe Ben can add to that a little
And
bit.
Carmen, that's what a great example. The as I'm recalling back even on that very incident, and I agree that was that. I think the attempt to be good is almost always there. The denominations themselves move us back to being nice, not because there's an intent that they don't want to be good. It's that it's a threat to the institution at times that the institution doesn't handle very well. The people within want it. And They want to be good, but the institution, for its own survival, keeps taking us back to niceness. These are the rules. This is the way it works. And so many times then those judgments come out from, even though we may not know the person that that rule would be against, it's a group of people. We just make it like it's a group of people or what, those types of things. We don't know them individually. And we haven't taken the time to know their hearts because we are living by the guidelines of the institution itself. But I don't think people uh, as a whole want to say or would want to say, oh, we'd rather just be nice and not good. In fact, I don't think that's even brought up. I think that nice and good are usually considered to be the same thing. And I think we need to look at that very carefully and say, wait a minute, are we being taught to be nice here or are we being taught to be good? I think it's really important. Other comments, questions? I think this is one of the biggest subjects that we need to look at and face in our own personal lives. Because I don't think there's many of us that want to be nice at the expense of being good. I want to be nice. But there's times I have to look at it, and sometimes that's hard. I have to look at it and say, this requires good, not just nice. And maybe my good means that I'm not nice to someone, so that somebody on the margins of society or some group on the margins of society can feel like they're loved and accepted and cared for. And so I can't be nice to the ones that are the leaders of my religion, say. At that point, I have to be good so that these over here on the margins can feel the love of God, can feel their value, can know that their hearts are being looked at and not just the outward appearances. Well, that's important. Any other thoughts or comments this morning?
I'll add just one more comment, and this has to do with the first question that was in the discussion questions, and that was something about what would you want your kids to choose the kinds of friends that Jesus did? And I've never been a parent. I've been an aunt and have watched my close friends and brothers and sisters raise their kids. But it also made me think of my own upbringing and how often we were encouraged or told to choose your friends wisely and make the right kind of friends. And I think there's certainly value in those um, in those guidance kind of comments as well. But then the flip side of that, do we then, and does that maybe not outwardly or as straightforwardly, but does that encourage them to ignore the others? Um, so it's just a something that made me ponder that a bit.
I think within that, we're often so afraid that our kids are going to be influenced to become like other kids, that we don't trust this very wonderful thing of their own hearts, trusting them to see the hearts of others and to see what those people are really like and to enjoy them and to love them and to care for them and to give them value. And if we do it the right way, they won't be influenced to just suddenly become terrible people. In fact, what you'll find, I think, is that they'll become very, very good people. Not always nice, but always good. because they'll begin to see how culture and society judges wrongly. And they'll begin to walk their lives, giving their lives away to people that have good hearts who have been marginalized. Ah, I don't know about you, but that's what I want my kids to be like. Thanks, everybody. I don't know if we are finished for the day. I think we probably are. I don't know that I need to say anything more. I probably talked too much. Thanks so much for your comment.
Thank you everyone for joining us and just kind of looking ahead and also addressing the survey that we had sent out. We'll be sending an email what we will be covering next week, and next week is the last Sunday of August, and initially we said we would do this through the end of August and kind of reevaluate. And we will be doing that this week. We really haven't had a chance to kind of sit down and talk about your responses, and I certainly thank you and appreciate each of you that did respond to our survey. We'll be looking at this week, and we'll tell you next week of if we'll be moving forward and how we will be moving forward if that is the case. But we certainly have enjoyed these Sunday mornings, just getting together with you, kind of in more of a relaxed atmosphere, if you will, and discussing some of these points from Ben's book. So next week we'll send an email, or this week we'll be sending an email what we will be covering. I anticipate probably the next 1 or 2 chapters of the book. I think we did probably a pretty good job of covering the nice and good chapter, which is like 3 chapters after this one that we did this week. So watch your emails, and again, thank you for taking the time this morning to joining us. We certainly appreciate all of you, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.